This was the beginning of a special day in Mrs. Norton's class. Today, the first book reports of the semester were going to be given. Jim was looking forward to them. His report wasn't due until next week. At the front of the room was Fred. He was going to give his report today. Fred's book was about baseball.
That part about the World Series. Smash! A homer with the bases loaded. In the last half of the ninth, too.
It seemed that Fred was going to give a good book report. Jim hoped he'd be able to give a good report, too. He had a book one to enjoy. Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Jim wanted to be able to share the book with his whole class, just as Fred wanted to. Later in the morning, Fred gave his report, but something was wrong.
It's about a lot of teams and how this one guy, he's the hero, and how he won a World Series and how he won it for his team.
Was he reporting on the same exciting book he had told his friends about before? The class didn't think the report was very interesting.
And, well, it's an exciting book, and I liked it.
When Fred came to the end of his report, and Mrs. Norton asked if anyone had any questions, no one did. There was nothing anyone wanted to discuss about Fred's book. At lunchtime, Fred talked about his report to Jim.
Nobody thought my book report was very interesting.
The part you told about before school sounded good.
Yes, Fred knew that part of the report well, but he couldn't remember the rest. Jim felt sorry for Fred, but would he be able to do any better? Well, he would certainly try. At home, a few days later, Jim had finished reading Tom Sawyer and began to plan his book report. He had already made out his library file card. It told the author's name, the title of the book, and that it was fiction, then what the book was about, and Jim's opinion of the book. At the bottom was his name. Jim had checked for errors in spelling and grammar. He wanted his card to be just right. Cards like this helped the class choose books. Now, could Jim plan his report so he could avoid Fred's mistakes? He tried to remember back to the day when Fred had given his report. Before class that day, Fred had told about an incident in his book so well that his friends had been very interested in it. But later, in front of the class, it was easy to see that Fred's full report hadn't been well prepared. Jim decided he would have to be well prepared if he wanted the class to share the enjoyment of his book. So he organized his report. He made an outline, a brief list of points that would help remind him of the information that should be in his report. First, he would tell the title of the book and the author, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, the pen name of Samuel L. Clemens. Then he would tell the subject of the book, what it was about. He had told briefly what the book was about on the card for the room library file, but for his report, Jim thought he should tell more. He pictured Tom Sawyer and his friends as they played along the Mississippi River more than 100 years ago. Jim would tell some of the adventures Tom had and some of the pranks he played. But Jim wouldn't tell too much. That would spoil the book for those who wanted to read it. He would just hint at some of Tom's adventures. He would tell about life on the Mississippi River, how Tom attended his own funeral, and what happened to him in the cave. Jim decided he would tell something about the main characters, too. He had grown to know them so well. He hoped he could make them as real to the class as they were for him. Two of the most interesting characters in the book were Tom and Aunt Polly. Jim also wanted to tell at least one interesting incident. There were many good ones to choose from, but he knew which one he especially wanted to talk about. Yes, this one. How Tom Whitewashed the Fence. Tom Sawyer had been able to get his friends to pay to do his own work for him. In a very amusing way, he convinced them that hard work was really fun. Yes, Jim would enjoy telling about this incident. So that he would be sure to remember this incident, he made a note in the outline. At the end of his report, Jim wanted to give his opinion of the book. He had enjoyed the book very much and felt it was worth reading. If only he could share his enjoyment with the class. By following this outline, Jim would be able to remember everything he wanted to say in front of the class. He had organized all the information for his report. But was that enough? Was there anything else he could do to help him be sure of giving a good report? Jim remembered that when you give a report, people are looking at you. He wanted to make a good appearance. He thought of the way Fred had looked when he gave his report. Not too good. Jim stood up straight. But would he remember to stand that way in class? His father said it might help Jim give a better report in class if he practiced giving it at home in front of the family. Jim thought that might be a good idea. His mother and father and sister were happy to listen to his book report. They helped Jim remember to stand up straight and speak distinctly in complete sentences. Jim was careful to use correct English. He spoke with expression, so that what he said was interesting. He wanted to be able to hold the attention of the whole class. When he had finished practicing his report, his family showed how much they had enjoyed it. Now, if he could just do as well in school. The next day in class, it was Jim's turn to give his book report. He was well prepared. He turned in his library file card and then began.
Would you like to meet a boy who could get you to do his work for him and still make you think it was fun? You can meet him in the book called The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Samuel L. Clemens, whose pseudonym is Mark Twain. This book is fiction. It's about the adventures of some people who lived in a small town on the banks of the Mississippi River more than 100 years ago. The adventures they have are often funny and sometimes very exciting. Can you imagine what would happen if you turned up at your own funeral, or what it would be like to be lost in a large cave? You can find out by reading this book. The main character, of course, is Tom Sawyer. Without even trying, he could get himself into more trouble, and then, just as fast, he would be out of it again. Tom was an orphan who lived with his Aunt Polly. She often punished him because she really loved him so much. Tom. She really did. But Tom had a way of getting around his Aunt Polly. Once she wanted him to whitewash a fence. That's a job something like painting a fence. Tom went to whitewash the fence, but while he was working, some of his friends came by.
Jim's book report was given so well that it was attracting the interest of the whole class. They were sharing Jim's book with him.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Point by point, Jim followed his outline until his report was finished. When it was time for questions, many wanted to know more about the book. The book report had made it sound so interesting. Some of the class had learned that the book was worth reading. Mrs. Norton thought it was a fine report. Some of the children in the room were going to read the book, too. And when Mrs. Norton asked the class if they would like to dramatize the whitewashing incident, everyone thought it was a fine idea. You can be sure Jim was pleased. All that preparation had really been worthwhile. He had shared his book with the whole class by making a good, Book Report.
Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. That was preparing your book report. My favorite part of that is the scene of the pan across all the students who are feigning enthusiasm for what the description of Tom Sawyer. Pretty funny. Anyways, so we watch old 16mm films. Based on my collection of stuff that I have. Some stuff is pre-recorded, and some stuff we are going to watch live via our telecine. Let me nudge this over here so you can see it. So this is a film transfer machine. Film is up here. It starts through here. There's a camera in here and a mirror. And then there's a little sensor, a little tack wheel that measures perfs, and then what it does is it takes a picture before. Hold on, something just went haywire. Okay, sorry, just into my belly. So it takes a picture for each frame, so you get a flicker-free image, and then we are streaming it to you live. So this film was part of a series. It was something that was on PBS called Simple Gifts. Back in the 70s, and I remember this very well, being very struck by it as a kid. And I happened to end up with films from the series. This one is The Great Frost. Enjoy.
Frost was, historians tell us, the most severe that has ever visited these islands. Birds froze in mid-air and fell like stones to the ground. At Norwich, a young countrywoman started to cross the road in her usual robust health, and was seen by the onlookers to turn visibly to powder and be blown in a puff of dust over the roofs as the icy blast struck her at the street corner. The mortality among sheep and cattle was enormous. Corpses froze and could not be drawn from the sheets. The fields were full of shepherds, ploughmen, teams of horses, and little bird-scaring boys, all struck stark in the act of the moment. One with his hand to his nose, another with a bottle to his lips, a third with a stone raised to throw at the raven who sat as if stuffed upon the hedge within a yard of him. The severity of the frost was so extraordinary that a kind of petrifaction sometimes ensued, and it was commonly supposed that the great increase of rocks in some parts of Derbyshire was due to no eruption, for there was none, but of the solidification of unfortunate wayfarers who had been literally turned to stone where they stood. But while the country people suffered the extremity of want, and the trade of the country was at a standstill, London enjoyed a carnival of the utmost brilliancy. The new king seized the opportunity that his coronation had given him to curry favor with the citizens by directing that the river, which was frozen to a depth of 20 feet or more, for 6 or 7 miles on either side, be swept, decorated, and given all the semblance of a park or pleasure ground, with arbors, mazes, alleys, drinking booths, etc., at his expense. Railed off from the public only by a silken rope, the pleasure ground became at once the center of the most brilliant society. Nothing could exceed the brilliance and gaiety of the scene by day. But it was at night that the carnival was at its merriest. The moon and stars blazed with the hard fixity of diamonds, and to the fine music of the flute and the trumpet, the courtiers danced. Orlando, it is true, was none of those who tread lightly the Coranto and the La Volta. He was clumsy and a little absent-minded. He had indeed just brought his feet together about 6 in the evening of the 7th of January at the finish of some such quadrille or minuet when he beheld, coming from the Muscovite embassy, a figure which, whether boy's or woman's, for the loose tunic and trousers of the Russian fashion served to disguise the sex, filled him with the highest curiosity. The person, whatever the name or sex, was about middle height, very slenderly fashioned, and dressed entirely in oyster-colored velvet, trimmed with some unfamiliar greenish-colored fur. But these details were obscured by the extraordinary seductiveness which issued from the whole person. Images, metaphors of the most extreme and extravagant, twined and twisted in his mind. He called her a melon, a pineapple, an olive tree, an emerald, and a fox in the snow, all in the space of 3 seconds. He did not know whether he had heard her, tasted her, seen her, or all 3 together. Finally, the unknown skater came to a standstill. She was not a hand's breadth away. She was a woman.
Auriez-vous la bonté de me passer le sel?
She asked.
Avec le plus grand plaisir, madame.
He replied, speaking French with a perfect accent. precious name he found was Princess Marushka Stanislavska Dagmar Natasha Ilyana Romanovich. And she had come in the train of the Muscovite ambassador, who was her uncle perhaps, or perhaps her father, to attend the coronation. Orlando and Sasha, as he called her for short, and because it was the name of a white Russian fox he'd had as a boy, a creature soft as snow, but with teeth of steel, which bit him so savagely that his father had it killed, would talk of everything under the sun, of sights and travels, of Moor and pagan, of this man's beard and that woman's skin, of a face, of a feather. Nothing was too small for such converse. Nothing was too great. But in all she said, however open she seemed and voluptuous, there was something hidden on all she did. However daring, there was something concealed. So the green flame seems hidden in the emerald, or the sun imprisoned in a hill. The clearness was only outward. Within was a wandering flame. It came, it went. At last, the play was ended. All had grown dark. But it was such a night as this that they had waited for. It was on such a night as this that they had planned to fly. At midnight, they would meet at an inn near Blackfriars. Horses waited there. Everything was in readiness for their flight. Suddenly, he was struck in the face by a blow, soft, yet heavy, on the side of his cheek. So strung with expectation was he that he started and put his hand to his sword. The blow was repeated 12 times on forehead and cheek. The dry frost had lasted so long that it took him a minute to realize that these were raindrops falling. The blows were the blows of the rain. At first they fell slowly, deliberately, one by one. But soon the 6 drops became 60, then 600, then ran themselves together in a steady spout of water. It was as if the hard and consolidated sky poured itself forth in one profuse fountain. In the space of 5 minutes, Orlando was soaked to the skin. Some blind instinct, for he was past reasoning, must have driven him to take the river bank in the direction of the sea. For when the dawn broke, which it did with unusual suddenness, the sky turning a pale yellow, and the rain almost ceasing, he found himself on the banks of the Thames, off Wapping. Now a sight, the most extraordinary nature met his eyes. Dazed and astounded, Orlando could do nothing for some time but watch the appalling race of waters as it hurled itself past him. At last, seeming to recollect himself, he clapped spurs to his horse and galloped hard along the river bank in the direction of the sea. Rounding a bend of the river, he came opposite that reach where not 2 days ago the ships of the ambassadors had seemed immovably frozen. Hastily, he made count of them all, the French, the Spanish, the Austrian, the Turk. All still floated. But the Russian ship was nowhere to be seen.
Sir, is it Hermione Gringold? I don't know the actress, but I'm sure somebody can look it up on IMDb and figure out what else she has done. But the name does, or the voice does sound familiar. So this film kind of haunted me as a kid, and it is a very bittersweet story. Really kind of fascinating, and it just resonates with me. So I was watching this for tonight's show. I'm doing a AV Geeks holiday special at 6 o'clock in conjunction with the North Carolina Science Museum. And so if you are looking for more holiday stuff, I'll be screening it tonight. Although I won't be showing this. This was a little too long for what I needed. But there will be some sing-alongs. There will be some special guests. So hopefully I'll see you then. Let's see. What do we got going on? I should mention that for some reason I need coffee. You know, not firing on all cylinders this morning. I think there's too much going on. So if you would like to support AV Geeks, one way you can do it is to pump caffeine into our bloodstream and into our nervous system. Another way is to hit like and subscribe, or to go to avgeeks.com and watch other things and tell people about what we do. This next film, it's from the late 60s, early 70s. Stop, Look, Think.
To get from one place to another, there is usually a best way to go. The ones who use the best way soon start a trail. In America, the first trails were made by animals. And then, Indians used the old animal trails and made more of their own. The first settlers who came to America followed the trails they found and opened still more trails themselves. When the settlers began to use wagons, trails turned into roads. The early automobiles had a hard time on dirt roads in bad weather. And so the roads were paved. Roads that let drivers get around from place to place in town are called streets. Streets never really end. You can go from any street in America to any other street, in any other town. And cars are going somewhere on these streets all the time, day and night. But what about people on foot? Well, people on foot still have trails. In town, these trails are usually paved and called sidewalks. But sidewalks do not go on and on. Most sidewalks have to stop when they come to a street. Ever since the old days, people on foot have learned that they have to look out for what is moving in the road or the street. If there isn't one there already, you have to imagine a stop sign wherever the street stops the sidewalk. You have to stop to be sure you don't try to use the street at the same time an automobile is using it. Drivers sometimes can't help but run into you if you are in the street at the wrong time. An official police car will show us how hard it is for a car to stop quickly, and why a driver may hit you even though he doesn't want to.
At only 25 miles an hour, a car is moving 37 feet each second, or about twice the length of the car itself. The driver, if he sees somebody starting to cross in front of him, takes almost a second before he can put his foot on the brake pedal. During this time, the car has already moved 30 feet. Now, after he has his foot on the brake, it is going to take at least 30 more feet to bring the car to a stop. So if the person on foot has stepped out while the car is less than 60 feet away, the car is going to hit him, and there isn't anything the driver can do about it.
See? Here is where the car is when the person steps out. This is where the driver sees him. And here is where he puts his foot on the brake. And this is how far it is going to take for the car to stop. Now, what if the person who stepped out had been able to see this mark where the car was going to stop? He would never have stepped out, would he? So, when you don't know how far the car will take before it can stop, it's best to just let it go by. The police car had good brakes, and it took 30 feet to stop. Many cars do not have good brakes and take even longer to stop. You might think, well, even if the car can't stop, I can stop. I'm on foot. All I have to do is just stop. It takes longer than you think.
A young person walking normally suddenly sees a car coming. But it takes a second or so to see the car and decide what to do. Then he stops. Actually, it has taken 6 to 8 feet to come to a stop. And running, it takes about 16 feet to stop.
This is the reason why you should always walk across the street. And don't forget, everything depends on whether the driver can see you. Can this driver see this person about to cross the street? No. From where the driver is sitting, the corner post of the car makes a blind spot. Now, there is one way to be sure you are not in a blind spot, and that the driver can see you. If you can see his eyes, you can tell if he can see you. Along the street, you can often be in a blind spot as far as a driver is concerned. If you are behind a tree, or a bush, or if you are behind a parked car, you are in a blind spot. Many people are struck by cars when they suddenly appear from behind something in the middle of the block. The driver doesn't want to hit them, but it takes time to stop a car. Even if it is only going 25 miles an hour. And if it is going faster, it's going to take even longer to stop. The driver doesn't expect anyone to be trying to cross the street here. And it is always extra dangerous to try to cross anywhere but at a corner or a painted crosswalk. Remember, to get from one place to another, there is usually a best way to go. The best way to get from one side of the street to another is to go safely. This means at a corner or a crosswalk. It means if there is a traffic light, wait for a new green light. One that has just changed to green, to give you time to look both ways, to be sure all cars have stopped. To give you time to look behind you, to see if there is a car coming down the cross street, a car that is going to turn at the corner. At any corner, the driver may start up again if he doesn't see you. If you can see the driver's eyes, you can tell whether he can see you. Trees, fences, and parked cars make blind spots. But you don't run out in the middle of the block anyway. Because we have found out that you can't stop fast. And we've seen that it takes a driver a long ways to stop. And that he may hit you, even though he doesn't want to. So you always cross at the corner. And you stop, because even the sidewalk stops when it comes to the street. When you always cross safely, you get into the habit of crossing safely, and it becomes easier to remember to do it. Because even though it seems you are safe at the stop sign, at the stoplight, in the crosswalks, you never take chances. You always use your eyes and ears. You always stop, look, and think.
So this is similar to a film I showed a couple of days ago, Safety on the Street, second edition. So lots of pedestrian safety stuff for kids. Oh, did this just go out? My light just go out? There you go. My fill light. I know what you're thinking. What was happening 80 years ago? You think 2020 was bad? Let's look at 1940.
Passion of 1914. May 28th, Leopold, King of the Belgians, surrenders, and the world despairs. Dunkirk. Here 300,000 Allied soldiers battle and swim to safety under an inferno of fire. Battle of France begins. For 3 terrifying weeks, the armies of Weygand fall back in the face of overwhelming mechanized might. Italy. While France fights for its life, Italy marches beside Germany. Six weeks after Holland and Belgium were crushed, tragic history is enacted at Compiègne. The image of General Foch watches as another conqueror arrives. He boards the same railroad car where Foch himself gave the armistice terms to the defeated Germany of 1918. These Nazi officials come with different emotions than those other Germans 22 years before. This time, French plenipotentiaries, seeking terms instead of giving them, arrive to learn the fate of their republic. Grim formality when victor and vanquished meet. With terms stated, Adolf Hitler allows time for the French to telephone the Vichy government. Solemnly, silently, the French delegates follow for conference with the man who became Premier of France only 6 days before. Henri Pétain, who must give the answer. Weighted hearts return to the historic car, bearing their fateful message. France has decided, and the knee is bowed in submission with a flourish of tragic pens. War spreads eastward. Britain's fleet blasts the port of Berbera in Somaliland. Defiance, alertness, strength, courage. The heroic RAF takes to the air. Another German plane meets its match. What? Convoyed merchantmen brave constant danger from the sky. Each ship becomes a target for the raiders' bomb. Each ship is set on getting supplies safely to Englishmen, to Welshmen, to Scots, to all ashore. Under brave General de Gaulle, brave Frenchmen still fight Germany. London. Waves of Nazi planes swarm westward to the world's largest city. Some reach London's warehouses, tenements, and great docks. Londoners take to shelter, unafraid. Old and young, their spirit undismayed. Above their heads, destruction is falling from the blacked-out heavens. Artillery and bomb pandemonium rages for hours, days, and months. London burns by night. But daylight finds undaunted grit and confidence as the job of digging out proceeds. Even the dummies get attention. We mean dummy. Buckingham Palace, symbol of empire, residence of Britain's monarchs, does not escape the Nazi reign of steel. King George and Queen Elizabeth examine a piece of the missile that demolished a part of their palace home. St. Paul's Cathedral, where royalty and commoner worship, also suffered. A bomb pierces the roof, destroys an altar, but spares other treasured monuments. The heroic RAF takes an ever-increasing toll. Nazi planes have fallen on English soil by the thousands.
May well be that the final extinction of a baleful domination will pave the way to a broader solidarity of all the men in all the lands than we could ever have planned if we had not marched together through the fire.
Aid to Britain short of war. In exchange for Atlantic naval bases in English possessions, 50 discarded World War destroyers are reconditioned. At a Canadian port, Americans transfer the sorely needed warcraft. Millions for artillery. Millions for tanks and anti-tank guns. Millions for airplanes, thousands of them, while American plants are producing other thousands for Britain. American Army airmen were the first to experiment with parachutes for war years before Russia and Germany made use of them in actual conflict. As Japan casts its lot with the Axis powers, the United States speeds the building of its first two-ocean navy. With the stroke of a pen, President Roosevelt sets in motion the nation's machinery for drafting all men between the ages of 21 and 35. October 16th. On this day, millions of American youth in every corner of the nation register for military service. History repeats itself. A World War drama is reenacted. The same fishbowl from which capsules were drawn for the wartime draft in 1917 again serves for the country's first peacetime call. America throbs to the beat of the most startling presidential campaign in many decades. Wendell Willkie arouses amazing devotion and respect in his strenuous bid for the White House. President Roosevelt also is given thunderous reception. For the first time in history, a president of the United States is re-elected for a third term.
Those news parade films are a lot of fun. They really, they capture that newsreel feel. And this was distributed by Castle Films, which their market was pretty much just home projector enthusiasts. So people who had projectors. This would be something they could show along with their home movies and animated shorts. Castle Films had a vast catalog, and they shot some stuff themselves, some stuff they licensed. There's lots and lots of Castle Films of cartoons that are silent with title cards, and it's really a vast amount of stuff. And so they would do a sports parade, they would do news thrills. They had a lot of stuff, war footage that they got sourced from, Signal, Army Signal Corps, and other sources. And then I think they got absorbed into Universal Studios. So, yeah, Castle Films. You'll see them if you go to an antique store and you see like a little tiny reel and the box says Castle on it, and they're trying to sell it for $100. Don't buy it, because they made lots and lots and lots of copies of Castle Films. So they are literally a dime a dozen in some cases. Now, I'm sure there's some rare titles there, especially there's some rare color Castle Films. But yeah, there you go. There's your little tidbit about Castle Films. Let's see. I want to learn about eggs. Here's some eggs.
These long, low buildings are part of a large egg farm. This egg farm has many laying houses just like this one. This is Mr. Tom Williams, a helper. Mr. Williams takes care of all the hens and the eggs in this house. The hens stay inside the house all the time. They never go outdoors. Inside this house, the hens eat and lay eggs. They walk and run and rest. Everything in the house is clean. There's good light and sunshine. There's plenty of fresh air. Mr. Williams cleans the water pans every day. The hens always have clean, fresh, running water. Hens that lay lots of eggs drink lots of water. These hens are healthy and strong. Ground-up corn cobs cover the floor. They are dry and clean for the hens' feet. This helps keep eggs clean. Each hen has a band on her leg with her number on it. It takes many buckets of feed for thousands of hens. Whole grain, such as oats and corn, is good food for hens that lay eggs. Into this trough goes enough feed to last 3 days. And now, condensed buttermilk, almost as thick as butter. Condensed buttermilk and dry grain mash. Hens like these together. The hens peck and peck at it. They eat all they want. A hen needs something gritty to grind her food. This oyster shell is gritty. It also helps to make strong egg shells. These hens get the best of care. These hens lay the finest of eggs. Mr. Williams gathers eggs from open nests. He works quickly but carefully. In the open nests, hens are free to come and go. Many hens may lay eggs in open nest. The helper gathers the eggs 5 days. Fresh eggs, clean shells. In the other end of the house, there are trap nests. This hen goes into the nest. The door closes behind her so she can't get out. Which nests will these other hens choose? It won't be many minutes until each hen in the trap nests lays an egg. Mr. Williams empties the nests many times a day. He wears an egg apron to carry the eggs. He keeps both hands busy opening the door, taking out the hen and the egg, and marking the chart. Here's a hen that has laid an egg. Here's the egg. Here's the hen's number. The helper marks the time when he takes the egg. 3 days a week, the helper weighs each egg he gathers from the trap nests. This is an extra large egg. If the egg is large, and if the hen lays one nearly every day, she's a very good laying hen. These hens seem to be looking for nests too. They walk, and they stop, and they look. Which nests will they go into? Now let's see what Mr. Williams does with the eggs he has collected. All the eggs go into thick paper cases which keep them from breaking. This case of eggs is ready for the cooling room. The egg cases have large holes so the air can move about the eggs all the time. All day long, the helper cares for the hens in his laying house and gathers and cases eggs for the cooling room. In the cooling room, the cool air keeps the eggs fresh. They stay here 2 days or longer. Then the eggs go into the candling and grading room. Some eggshells become a little dirty. The electric egg cleaner takes off dirt. Small rollers hold the eggs against whirling wheels. These wheels take off dirt and leave the shell clean. A final touch with the sandpaper brush cleans the ends. Eggs and more eggs. Eggs from the cooling room right along on a conveyor. A tray of 3 dozen eggs onto the conveyor. Eggs, clean and white. Dozens and dozens of eggs. One by one, the eggs roll off the conveyor to a moving belt. The belt takes them to the candling machine to be tested. A man looks at each egg in front of strong lights. Good, clear eggs like these pass the test. This is how a good egg looks to the man at the candling machine. Sometimes he finds an egg that has a spot in it. The spot doesn't mean that it's a bad egg, but he takes it out. This egg has a shell that might break. The man at the candling machine takes out all the eggs like this. They will be sold as frozen eggs, or dried eggs, or powdered eggs. This machine separates the eggs according to size. The extra large eggs come off the machine first. Next, the large-sized eggs. Then the medium-sized eggs, and then small eggs. Each size is kept together as the helpers pack the eggs. Some go into large shipping cases, some into cartons. The small end goes down, the large end up. Dozens of fresh eggs, cartons closed, sealed with a government label of quality and size. All eggs go into fiber cases holding 30 dozen eggs. This man seals the cases of eggs, and they are ready for shipment. Every day, many thousands of eggs are wheeled out to the loading room for shipping. The covered truck protects the eggs from the heat of the sun. Hot sunshine would spoil eggs quickly. So that is how we get eggs from the egg farm. Eggs on their way. Perhaps the truck will go to the railroad station and a train will carry the eggs to the city. Or perhaps they will go over the highway directly to the food stores where we may buy them. Clean and fresh and good to eat.
Aren't you going to stand up and sing? But I'm not a man. Oh, in this case, you're a man. Men of God includes both men and women. It does?
And so, my brethren, we are reminded once again that every man is a son of God, and that all mankind is one brotherhood.
Why does your pastor speak of man and son? Is he not speaking to the women?
Of course he is. Women are included in those words. Man includes woman, too. And our word son includes daughter as well.
You have a very strange language. Man includes woman.
And that, brethren, is what it means to be a real man of God.
Wait a minute. Don't tell me. Father includes mother.
Now you're catching on.
Oh, I'm not included.
So I was thinking, you know what? There's not enough pipe cleaners in our lives. So this film is included out is a short film made by a woman, and it's basically the premise is you have a foreign Asian, because it's a yellow pipe cleaner. I'm not sure, and has kind of slanted eyes. Person is at a church and is hearing them talk about men and talking about brothers and all that stuff, and someone is trying to clarify and say, well, no, it's inclusive, it includes women as well. Then she goes to the bathroom and of course uses the men's room and she's embarrassed. So this is excuse me, this is one of the reasons I enjoy collecting films, is because I find things like this, and I'm just like, what is going on? And this I got from a Methodist film library that was basically getting rid of their films. And so, big fan of stuff like that. And this is what's so great about film, and ultimately video, is that you have people who just have an idea, and they're driven to create this thing, and then they get it distributed. And that's what happened in this case, is that this got distributed to Christian film libraries. And I'm sure the synopsis made it read a lot better than the execution that we watch. But it did remind me very much of when I was in Vacation Bible School. We did little pipe cleaner people, and we did some sort of something from the Gospels. I can't remember what it was. It was a long time ago, but I do remember the pipe cleaner people. So this film does resonate with me in that regard. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that, or at least were baffled by that as much as I was. Thanks again for tuning in today. Very much appreciate your time and your attention and your eyeballs and your comments. And it's always a joy for me to do this. A reminder tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we'll be doing the avgeeks Holiday Special. I'll be showing a bunch of great and horrible holiday films. And there's a couple of sing-alongs in there, so hopefully you can sing along. And hopefully YouTube will not, or Facebook won't shut us down for those sing-alongs. But you notice there's a Punch and Judy and The Great Frost. Well, there's a Punch and Judy tonight. So hopefully we'll see you tonight. And like I said, there'll be special guests, and it'll be a lot of fun. So everybody, hopefully I'll see you then. If not, I'll see you on Monday. As always, take care of yourself. Please rewind and love each other, and that includes yourself. So everybody, take care. Maybe I'll see you tonight.